Okay. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the steering committee meeting. If I could, I'm just going to have everybody just go around and introduce themselves for the committee's purpose, and we'll get going. So I'll start in probably my upper left.
Okay, well, I'll go to Sal Pasquarello, Superintendent.
Dean Esposito, Mayor's Office.
Mark Dillon, Mayor's Office.
Sharon Calitro, Planning Director.
Courtney Laborious, Finance at the Board of Ed.
Am I up?
Sure.
Mayor Mark, oh, sorry. Mark Boughton. Mark Boughton, resident of Danbury.
Oh, it's hard. You've been saying that for 20 years. It's a hard habit to break. I'm certain of that.
I'm sorry, Mayor Joe.
How about Antonio and Dan?
Antonio Adarola, Public Works Director and General Zoom entrepreneur.
Put the phone down.
Dan Petrovich, engineer.
It's great to see everybody tonight. Thanks for being here. We have Tiller Jean O'Brien here with us tonight, assisting with the recording, and so she is from the mayor's office as well. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to Mark Boughton to just give us a briefing of where we're at, and then take control of the meeting and run it as the chairman that he is.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to update everybody where we are in this process and this project. So we did have I thought a fairly productive meeting last week. Actually met prior to that meeting and spoke with Sharon, and then Sharon came back last week and had done a lot of work on the zoning piece of this. Very impressive with all the very creative out of the box thinking that she's done here. We'll have her brief us on that. Antonio and I continue to have discussions with the state of Connecticut. That'll continue. I'm glad to see David on the line, because we need to, we talked to Les, we've got to go and get we need a narrative for the actual project. Doesn't have to be hyper specific, but does have to be specific enough so that people can be able to vote on it, and so that Robinson and Cole can draft the appropriate language along with the special act that should be given over to Robinson and Cole as well, so that they can look at the reimbursement rate and things like that. Not that it's just good for them to know, to have in their file. So we think we got a pathway to get this in front of the council. Obviously, David's going to have to do some financial analysis and work, and he'll do that. You know, everybody can do that on their own track, so that when we circle back, we can have another meeting to see where we are and all these different pieces to it. But the goal here is to get an ad hoc in front of the council, to get this in front of the voters, or a vote on it. And we'd like to do that before June 30th. That'll give time for a couple things to happen. One is for David then to figure out he's got to look at what we need for cash flow for both short-term and long-term for the project. So he'll get enough, he'll be able to do an issuance, and I'm not speaking for him, but I'm assuming he could do an issuance at some point in July to be able to provide enough dollars for soft costs and things like that we'll need. And then he can plan out for the rest of the 2 years when he's going to need to draw down to pay for the project. And it'll also help us work with Sal's group that is busy working on curriculum side of things. And finally, to finish off everything with the state and turn into them our goals by September 1, all of the information that they need, so that we're in the queue for October 1's reimbursement process. So that's sort of the long and short of it. And at this point, I wanted to turn it over to Sharon, and if she can brief us on the zoning work and discussions that she's had. She did a very nice presentation to us a couple of days ago. I think it would be good for the community and for the committee to hear what she has to say. So Sharon.
Great, thank you. as the committee chair indicated, we've had several meetings with the property owners and their legal counsel over the last couple of weeks to try to work through the issue of the use of a secondary school on that site. And we've come up with some amendments to the zoning regulations that actually would be necessary to accommodate the school and or are necessary for the summit to proceed as with their tenant space. I don't know if you want me to get into that, you know, the individual.
Yeah, why don't you, because it does show a lot of work on your behalf, Sharon. And I know sometimes you're feeling a little beat up, but you really, I'm just so impressed with the work you did on this.
Thank you. Okay, so for everybody on this meeting and who might be watching, so secondary schools are not permitted in the PND zone at the moment. So we would have to add that school. There are other schools that are permitted. So we're going to add, the proposal is to add a secondary school to the list of schools that are currently permitted. And then simultaneously, and all these things would be submitted together, kind of exclude square footage for publicly owned and operated schools from the total non-residential square footage that's allowed pursuant to the regulation. So there's a limit in easy terms, there's a limit on how much non-residential square footage they can have under the current regulations. And there's no carve out for any type of educational facility. So we've come up with some language to carve out the square footage that would be associated with a public school that the city owns and operates. And what does that do? It doesn't harm the landowner or developer from the potential non-residential tenant base or leasable space, but is a public benefit for the municipality. And then in addition, we have to make some other adjustments in terms of the requirement that there's a minimum number of dwelling units that have to be in the retrofitted building. So we have some amendments to address that. Again, this will get us to where we need to be in 3 pods, which is what I think we've all been talking about. We've agreed on principle, obviously, to work together with the landowners. And I would just say that once it's submitted to the zoning commission, which it will be by the owners of the summit, I encourage support from the Board of Education and from the community in terms of trying to, indicate what the public benefit of these amendments will achieve. And again, the regulations were written a long time ago. They were amended recently, but even that amendment didn't address kind of where we are from an educational standpoint. So this kind of is a unique situation. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are. I'll answer any questions or.
So with the amendments, and thank you for doing all of that. Would there be any issues with our buses and things like that? Does that just get subsumed into when we call it create a secondary, and the assumption is the buses and egress is all okay? We won't have any pushback.
We would have to look at the site plan, but I'm not anticipating that. The existing zoning allows a kindergarten, nursery, and elementary school. All we're doing is adding a secondary school. So the assumption is there would have been buses in a P&D zone in which this site sits for those other educational facilities. So it's kind of the same thing. We'll look at it on the site plan when they come in. So again, zoning amendments, then they'd have to amend the master in terms of the process. We have to make some regulatory changes. Then they have to amend the master plan to show that there will be a school in a portion of that building. And then there would be another process after that, which would be the kind of site plan for the school. So we wouldn't get to the kind of the nitty gritty or where you're at until we get to the site plan.
Mark, would all this be done before the vote?
It's not contingent on the vote. In other words, you don't have to, you can still have the vote without having to have this done. I would like to have it done by September 1 for our application to the state. Only because I know they're going to ask us, because they really have been challenging Antonio and I on this process. So I want everything buttoned up when we turned in our paperwork for this, which it's going to be a push, but we can get it done. There's broad community support for this project. Obviously, we would ask the board to help us in terms of just, public hearings, PTOs, all the other outside advocacy groups, along with, I know the council's very supportive of it, the mayor's supportive of it, Sal, you're supportive of it. So I think it has consensus. And that makes life a lot easier when Sharon's going to the commission. I think people are thrilled for this, really. So
Yeah, and if I could just say, I mean, I think the petitioner will be the summit, and we'll just continue our review like we normally do for any applicant. We just worked with them to ensure that this met our needs and it meets a public need. I'm anticipating finalizing this language in the next couple of weeks, so that would get into I'm hoping to get into the zoning commission. They would submit before the next regular meeting of the zoning commission, which is March 9th. That would be the official date of acceptance. And then the clock statutorily runs from there. So the zoning could be taken care of in a couple of months.
Yeah, so, and it's definitely not a showstopper. Sharon and I know showstoppers. This is not a showstopper. It's from the zoning side and planning side. This is no problem. And, it's just you got to do your 30 days here and your 45 days there. That's just part of the process. But I don't see any issue with it. Okay, so thank you, Sharon. Again, once again, thanks for just wrestling this bull to the ground.
Thank you.
Antonio, you want to talk a little bit about conversations that you've had either with the state or with Anthony, with the owners of the summit, just to kind of brief us and bring us up to speed there?
Yes, so since we last met, we've had multiple meetings, including meeting with the Board of Education. We actually met and toured the project one more time. We had another meeting today to really kind of coordinate our efforts. And we're going to be meeting on a weekly basis moving forward. We also today had a meeting with the state, as we do every 2 weeks, which is ultimately going to go to once a week as we start to gear up. We again are struggling with not the individual we're working with, but we're struggling with, unfortunately, his boss in getting any sort of direction on how to proceed. So we decided today, I wrote an email and we're sending it to his boss today. That's pretty pointed, saying either you're going to get involved or get out of the way. Again, I don't have a choice because I can't keep doing this. We're moving so quick and in a lot of different directions that I can't pull back and circle back to a decision I made a month ago. So that's happening. We also had a very good meeting with the developer to go over the special legislation. We spent an hour and a half with that individual so he understands what the law is, how it's written, and how it potentially will impact him constructing the building. And we also have procured, I don't want to say procured, we had a free consultation session with 2 attorneys to help us figure out how to put the condominium piece of this project together, and also how the commercial sale of a condominium would work in a municipal setting, which hasn't really been done before. So over the last 2 weeks, it's been, we've probably had 20, 30 meetings, and it's all moving, and we have a lot of different pieces together. We're actually starting to develop, I have the beginnings of it in front of me, a project plan outline that kind of describes all these moving pieces, when they have to get done, who needs to do them, and a potential contingency plan for each item. Because as you know, the condominium piece has to be developed, has to be accepted, and it has to be sent to the state before the application goes through. How we procure the building, and the 3 appraisals and what the state's gonna want those appraisals to include has to also start happening sooner than later. We have to go out and procure a architect to do the 30% DD development set of drawings and specifications. And that's gonna start happening. Dan has already put a really good scope of work together that we're sending to the state next week. So this plan, which I will share with you guys, will kind of show all the work that has to happen, when it has to happen, and sort of who the drivers are on it. For the referendum, I'm gonna sit and ride in that boat, but somebody else is gonna drive it. And I'll get you guys whatever information you need, but it's incredible when you put on paper how much work has to happen for all of us to get this project done. And with Sharon's work, it basically has allowed us to say this is a realistic project, which we were a little worried a couple weeks ago it may not be. But it's all good stuff. It's a real unique project. It involves a tremendous amount of effort, but it's very it's very lively in a lot of different forms. So, and that's it. I'll take any questions you guys may have.
I would only say, Antonio, if you, as you're going through this, if there's things, I mean, they can't be huge changes, but if there are minor tweaks to the legislation, may for a shall or shall for a may, or, a semicolon or a comma or something like that, now's the time to raise that as we start drafting documents. We probably should meet with the delegation on a Zoom call once we get the Robinson and Cole documents back, just to review it with them, and do a meeting like this. I think it would be good to invite them there and just kind of update them where we are. They did work really hard at getting this legislation passed. And I think that there'll be, I definitely know that there's legislative support if we have to make some minor changes within the spirit of what they've agreed to. It won't be a problem. But you want to do that because the session ends in June.
And Mark, as you and I discussed, there's a lot of different ways to deal with the resistance. I'm still trying to work along the lines that I initially discussed, but it's been a month and I'm not getting anywhere. So at some point, it's going to get rough.
Yeah, well, I spoke to a couple of our own members of our delegation. They're all very supportive of this.
Right.
So this isn't an adversarial thing at all. It's all about all of us working together as a team. And I think the sooner we didn't have anything to show them initially, so I didn't want to bring them in and say, well, we don't know. Now that we're getting a lot of the answers to some of the city related stuff, the zoning piece, the financing piece, how with the referendum date, those things, I think it's a good time to bring them in and just brief them on where we are. And we could do that under the guise of this meeting the next time we meet. I think that's helpful so that they're armed if we do have to call on them for assistance. They'll have all the back information. And one of the COVID has said a lot of horrible things. There's no question. Today I just talked to somebody who lost their father in a few days. I talked to him this morning. So we all know those stories. But one of the things that has helped is making meetings more accessible for people, particularly legislators who are, all over the place, working different committees and public hearings and all that stuff. So it might be a good time to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Mark, when we do that, we should invite someone from the board just so that that'd be a good meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think is Joe Britton head of the
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the building, and if there's a vice, I don't know if there's a vice chair to that committee, but or the committee members, whoever, or just make it open to anybody if they want to come in. But
there's really wide support.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to us.
I want to thank Antonio. Antonio we had a few of my staff go there day before yesterday, Wednesday, I guess it was, just to rewalk the grounds again. The exciting part at some point, to let everybody know, we're working with the gentleman and the spearheader behind the Nashville Academies. And we've had sessions with him and his partner, and we're developing all the educational programming. So at some point, we'll even update the group on that. It's really extremely exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Doc, if we could get Kara in to do a presentation on what she's been up to. I know they started, I was going to participate. Unfortunately, I made some changes, and but I would love to get a briefing, and I think this committee would benefit for them as they move forward. But you can't help but get excited when you go into that building. You cannot help but get excited.
Well, I mean, just let me
You
take
can't.
let me take a little bird walk. That building and the thinking there will drive what happens at Danbury High School. So this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for kids that even that are attending the high school as well as the summit. The plan is really more dynamic and kinetic and not just static. It's really exciting. So at some point we'll have them and we'll be talking about it. But
from an economic development side, Sharon and I worked with about 8 different developers, marketers, companies that were going to do all these wonderful things. Nobody could get anything off the ground there. And finally, we got a more of a local group that understands the vagaries, challenges of the building, and has really, done some great things. They, not just this, the New Vance, New Vance office space that they're doing there is incredible. The apartments and now the school. I mean, this is going to fill a building that for the 20 years I was mayor could never get more than maybe 300,000 or 400,000 square feet filled. And so I think I could speak for Sharon and say we're excited about this. I mean, I just can't believe it. I remember 1985 when there were 3,500 workers there and it was full. So I just think it's going to be a great thing. So next steps. David, I don't know if you want to say anything from the financial side at all, or I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You don't have to say anything, but
no, that's fine. Timing is always very important. I assume the referendum is going to be early June at the latest. In order for us to do an issue in July, we're going to need to have an answer on that because we have to go out in July. That if we miss that window, we're going to have to reschedule something for the fall.
I think you and I did that once, and it was a little bit of a headache. It was a lot of bit of a headache.
Well, we have to go through the process all over again. It's a duplicate process. It gets it's expensive. And, because we have to go out in July regardless, because we have bands due in July.
That's right.
We got to redeem those.
Okay. So we'll need to
We don't want to miss that window.
So Antonio, we need that. We need really a narrative for bond counsel, just explaining what we're going to do here. And then they'll take that and they'll put that into their language. You can certainly send a copy both to myself, to the mayor, and to David, and we'll put Sharon too in that loop, and we'll circulate around just in case and Les obviously.
Yeah.
And we'll just take a quick gander at it, make sure it's good to go, and get it off to Robinson and Cole right away.
Yeah.
And we need to talk to Glenn and say this is a hot one. We need you to move on this.
Because believe it or not, where the timeline is very tight. Leading
It
up
is
right now.
Yeah, we're tight. But one thing I'll say, Mayor, is that we have gone to the voters. We've really scoped this more. We're not there yet, but by the time we get a narrative written, we've scoped this more than we've scoped other projects and gone to the voters with. So I'm confident that we have enough for a vote. Remember, a vote doesn't mean you're going to spend the money. It just means you have the authority to spend the money. If there's still a major showstopper, Antonio doesn't do the project, and we have to switch gears. We may have to go back and get another vote from the voters, or the council may be able to redirect the money depending on how we word. And that's one of the things we would look at is how we worded the language in the bond.
Now, we haven't applied to the state yet, right?
No, that's not till October 1.
All right. Have they endorsed it and given their approval and they kind of set it aside, or, because that's going to be important when we go to, go out for money and get, have our discussions with the rating agencies. Because
Yeah,
it's going to say, are we really going out for 93 million or 20% of 93 million because the state is funding 80%?
Yeah, so there is special legislation with that number 80% in there. Now, some people say, well, what if they don't borrow it or bond it, right? School construction projects always get funded. They always get funded. Playgrounds and golf courses may not get funded, but school constructions do. So we did struggle a little bit with the developers financing team. I met with them to explain the process, because they kept saying, well, what if there's not a vote? I'm like, no. There's always going to be a vote on schools. I've even spoken personally. The governor's asked me about this a number of times. He's 100% on board. This will meet the top of his list when the bond council, with the bond commission sits down to do their school construction vote. Other projects, I don't know. That would be things like roads and bridges and stuff like that.
Well, for the rating agencies, the risk analysis is, it really comes down between 63% or 80. And that's really what it comes down to for that.
Okay, great. Well, the legislation says 80%, so they're going to like that. It's in black and plain language, black and white.
So they approved the legislation, they just haven't approved the bonding.
They never do.
That's
Right.
fine. Well,
Yeah.
right, they never do. That always comes later when the project is closer to happening. Right.
And we'll end up waiting 2 or 3 years for the first check to show up.
Yeah. That's a longer than that, but yes.
I remember many times I said, oh yeah, remember we built that garage at the building? Oh yeah, that's right. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
So it's all good. So that's, go ahead. Yes,
Okay, so,
Mayor.
I had some deeper discussion with Les about a timeline. He has spoken to Robinson and Cole, and they were just waiting on a narrative, figuring that we probably need to get this on the April agenda for the city council for timing to get it to go to an ad hoc committee of the whole for review, and then, either a special council meeting in late April or a special council meeting in May if we have to go that late. But the time, we get very close in the time on that. So we just want to express that tonight, that it's very tight on timing.
Yeah, the 60 days, you gotta have 60 days. Yeah, there's a very scheduled timeline. So there may even, and we'll coordinate this with Robinson and Cole, but with one of the special meetings that we have in, in March or in April, with all the other budget hearings and all that, you probably wrap it into that, after the initial introduction in the
Right.
April meeting,
Right.
Regular meeting.
Yep, we'll get it done. Okay. Anybody else have anything else for us? Okay, seeing none. Mayor, thank you. And
Thank you.
we will get back to you with this information. Sharon, again, good work. David, thank you. We'll keep you in the loop. And Antonio, I'll reach out to you tomorrow just to touch base with you about a couple of things.
Thank you, everybody, for your effort on this. Appreciate it, as always. And have a good weekend, and we'll talk to everybody soon.